Jessica Donner, the Director of Every Hour Counts, former collaborative for building after-school systems. I'm very excited to welcome you all today to our webinar, Coordinate This, After School Across Cities, which we're pleased to co-host with the Wallace Foundation and present in partnership with the National League of Cities, the Institute for Youth, Education, and Families. The purpose of this webinar is to discuss findings from the recently released report from FBI 360 and the Wallace Foundation called Is City After-School Coordination Going Nationwide? And hear from leaders of two citywide efforts and a local foundation about what these findings mean in the context of their work. For those not familiar with Every Hour Counts, we're a coalition of 11 citywide organizations that increase access to quality learning opportunities, particularly for underserved students. Through policy, practice, and communications, we help build expanded learning systems nationwide. Before that, I wanted to mention a few logistical items. First of all participant phone lines are muted to avoid background noise. While they're muted, we would like this to be an interactive webinar. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the presentation via the question and answer tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will answer your questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. To record this webinar and post on our website, afterschoolsystems.org next week, and the webinar will run for 1 hour until 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So let's start. In the interest of making this interactive, we have a very simple poll for you to complete on the right-hand side of your screen. We would like to get a sense. We see there are, let's see how many people are on this webinar. Some people and more so joining us. We'd like to get a sense of the types of organizations you represent. So please enter that information and submit. Thank you. And I'd like to speak to our agenda for today. First, we'll be hearing from Nina Sonnenberg, the Communications Officer at the Wallace Foundation, who will provide background and context on what after-school system is, why the Wallace Foundation commissioned this report, and what the report tells us about citywide after-school coordination efforts around the country. Nina, we'll hear from two citywide leaders, Kim Markman from the Nashville After Zone Alliance and Chris Smith from the Boston After School Alliance, to speak about what in the findings resonated with them and to provide advice to other cities on effective approaches to after-school systems. Dr. Roberts, Vice President of Education Grants at Baptist Community Ministries, will speak about the role of local foundations and private investment in supporting coordinated systems. And we'll open it up to questions and answers. Again, we encourage you to ask questions via the question and answer tab on the right-hand side of the screen. Now that we've completed the poll, just a second, we'll see who is online. Great. We have a nice diverse, we have 78 people so far, and we have a diverse group, which makes sense because we know it takes a variety of city leaders to build an after-school system, and glad to see a wide representation today. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Now I'd like to introduce Nina Sonnenberg, the Communications Officer at the Wallace Foundation, to provide background on after-school systems building and salient findings from the report. Nina draws on her experience as a former communications director of two national nonprofits to share messaging and share lessons from the foundation. She works primarily in the Learning and Enrichment Division with a focus on after-school systems building, expanding opportunities, and summer learning. Nina, please take it away.
I'm glad to thank you to Jessica and to Nina at Every Hour Counts for organizing today's webinar, and National League of Cities, Institute for Youth, Education, and Families for its supporting role. And thanks to everyone on the line for tuning in today. We know it's a busy time of year. I'm pleased to share data from a recent national survey that can help you build understanding and support for an after-school system in your own city. The research was conducted by FHI 360, a nonprofit that conducts research into education, economic development, and other issues. The full report is available free online. Also, a 4-page user-friendly research brief and an even user-friendly 1-page infographic. Today, I'll walk you through some top-level takeaways. Next slide, please. So to enter common vocabulary, I'll begin by reviewing the key elements of a coordinated after-school system. experiences of more than 14 cities that have worked directly with the Wallace Foundation, as well as of NLC and Every Hour Counts, and the reach of the RAND Corporation. I'll go through a few key findings you find interesting, ending thoughts on how to bring this work home. What do you mean by after-school system? As you know, after-school systems are based on the idea that children benefit from frequent participation in high-quality programs and can boost access to these high-quality programs by uniting after-school players across sectors. What do these players do specifically to expand access? There are key areas. One, leadership, in particular mayor, but also possibly a city agency or a nonprofit intermediary, someone conducting the orchestra or driving the train or continually sprinkling the magic dust that keeps folks coming to meetings and honoring their commitments. Selection, to understand what services are needed and where. And three, improvement, a deliberate effort to set benchmarks and raise quality system-wide. If all goes well and you plug in elements 1 through 3, you add dust, and your payoff is number 4, participation, more than benefiting from high-quality after-school, especially if it's needed. Now, in 2000, that was just a hypothesis. So what do we see today? We have some evidence that after-school building, system building, is a national trend, and documented 27 cities doing this work in 2011. They report Municipal Leadership for After-School. That same CBAS, now Every Hour Counts, received survey responses from 212 nonprofits that play a school intermediary role in their cities. Given where we started with few cities doing coordination, this looked like a trend, but we wanted rigorous long-term national data. We commissioned this baseline study from FHI 360, a snapshot this year, and back then in 5 years, and at that point, perhaps draw very robust conclusions about a trend. I lift up several key points that we can discuss and that we hope you can use in your own work. First, cities are coordinating. Well, half of the cities contacted for the survey are coordinating systems. The exit is between 59 and 77%. The difference depends on how we interpret those who could not identify anyone knowledgeable about coordination. Now, for us, that's already a surprise, the sheer number. We know that at least 77 of the 250 largest U.S. cities are doing some work to coordinate after-school systems. Ask, how vast is the coordination? As you can see, the median number of agencies and organizations was 20, but that reflects a wide range, from 1 to, if you can imagine, 700 agencies. Is that we appear to have reached a tipping point. There are many cities seeing value in this approach and find ways to do it. How are they doing it? Many cities in the study use at least one of the 3 key coordinating strategies: data, quality, and a coordinating entity. Few use all 3 strategies, only 22%. Looking at the chart, one point you might lift up locally is that a system is built over time, and it's okay to pick one place to invest as a start. And when you look more carefully, you see a system is perhaps a harder sell or a bigger investment, starting with a coordinating entity or using quality standards. Coordinating entity is involved in setting up a coordinating entity and vary. Next slide, please. As you can see in the pie, about half are freestanding nonprofits, but one size does not fit all. Does mayor support matter? The term mayor's involvement does have several measurable effects. Right side of this infographic row, you can see cities with highly committed mayors, that cities who they describe their own mayor as being committed to after-school system building are likely to use a data system, as with no mayoral commitment, 40% versus 22%. City-committed mayors, now we're looking at the money bags here, are more likely to see funding steady or growing. Researchers were struck that even those with moderately committed mayors saw some decrease in funding. That's a bit of a surprise finding. Up here is that a mayor really has unique power with in a city. And dramatic foreshadowing, you will slide again from a highly committed mayor who can say more about what that means specifically and how that happens. So how can all this help you make the case for an after-school system? Your key audience will look different. We do suggest that you start by thinking about audiences and think big, think broad, think in terms of building relationships and buy-in, not just sending an occasional press release or grant proposal. It may be a local funder would be open to brainstorming on these issues. And without putting a fellow panelist on the spot, we will hear more about that today from New Orleans. The cities and Every Hour Counts also report that cities like knowing where they stand in relation to similar cities. Is yours a mayor? Is it falling behind? Which of these might compel your mayor to call that meeting or your school district to consider sharing some of that data? And that's quite, I'll leave you with as a thought question. Keep in mind that the Wallace Foundation's Online Knowledge Center has a full copy of this report and the infographic, as well as a suite of resources in after-school system building. It's available for free download at wallacefoundation.org. So thank you, Eddie, and back to you, Jessica.
Great. Thank you, Nina, so much for that. One, really helpful setting the stage of what after-school system building and its value. I like the magic dusting. And then also providing the high-level findings from that report and sharing those really useful infographics. So thank you. We citywide coordination comes in all shapes and sizes, and particularly we learned that from that CS, Now Every Hour Counts publication that Nina referenced, and we'll give a link for that later in the webinar. And as a nod to that, we invited leaders of both a municipal-led effort in Nashville and a profit-led effort in Boston to shed their perspectives on the implications of the findings in on their own work. So first, for the Nashville effort, we have Candy Markman joining us, who's the director of the after-school initiatives in Nashville. And she was charged by Mayor Carl Dean in 2008 to launch the Nashville After Zone Alliance, which is a citywide network of after-school zones for the Nashville Metro Schools high-risk middle school students. NAZA is a nationally recognized system of free, quality after-school programs that provide academic support and new creative outlets for students at safe and convenient locations, both at school and in the community. After Candy speaks, you'll hear from Chris Smith, Executive Director of Boston After School and Beyond, which is a public-private partnership that seeks to realize, now for the first time I'm saying this, former Mayor Thomas Menino's goal of ensuring that every child in Boston has the opportunity to develop to their full potential. Boston Beyond's role is to expand learning and skill development opportunities for students. Just look on Boston Beyond, they catalyze partnerships among program providers, philanthropy, business, and higher education, the city of Boston, especially Boston Public Schools, and Boston Beyond advances student learning by leveraging the strengths of many stakeholders, coordinated approach to school and community partnerships. And as you'll hear from Chris shortly after Candy speaks, this coordinated approach is at the very core of every Boston Beyond initiative. First, we're going to hear from Candy from the municipal perspective about sort of how findings of that report resonated with her and advice to other communities. So welcome, Candy from Nashville.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, all. And I'm here today because Nashville is a poster child for what highly committed mayoral support looks like on the ground. Early in his tenure, Mayor Dean launched the Nashville After Zone Alliance as one of his cornerstone initiatives. He's investing heavily in all three of the core elements that described: a coordinating entity, a shared data system, and program quality. He's investing in the programs themselves, and his investment has grown steadily each year. It's the poster child label. So I was asked to briefly describe to you how the mayor got engaged, what his support has meant to NASA, and we're looking into the future. So local political map and structure in any city, I think, has a powerful influence on its system building work. Let me set that context quickly for you. National Davidson County has had one consolidated city-county government for the past 50 years. It covers over 500 square miles with a population of 650,000. The mayor and the 40 Metro Council members are limited to 2 four-year terms. There's a national school district with over 80,000 students. Our mayor develops one consolidated budget proposal. The council passes a budget ultimately, but neither the mayor nor the Metro Council has any control over how the school board and the superintendent share their portion of the budget. So to set the political context, let me give you a brief history. Shortly after his election, Mayor appointed a task force to recommend ways that he could help support increased high school graduation rates from which sits outside of the school district. One recommendation from that task force was increased access and quality for after-school programs for middle school students. The recommendation had been carefully crafted with both national and local data about the value of after-school and about local gaps. It was crafted carefully to specifically reference the mayor's 3 high priorities, which are education, public safety, and economic development. As a result of really the way the recommendation was framed, the mayor was really compelled by what he heard, and it was one of a handful of the task force recommendations he chose to implement. He, as planning director, to help him identify champions on the Metro Council and in the school district. And with support from national partners like the National League of Cities, Ready by 21, and the Wallace Foundation, these champions were able to benchmark other cities. As a result, they decided to develop an after-school system here that's based a lot on the Parents After-School Alliance, PASA model. A council was created here with the mayor as chair and the school superintendent as vice chair. The leadership council is also composed of city department heads, other leaders, nonprofit leaders, along with elected officials. That's one core element that's at play. At the same time, youth-serving stakeholders were convened. Over 8 months, they first adopted Nashville's Principles of Positive Youth Development, then Standards of Youth Program Quality, and then finally they adopted 2 nationally recognized strategies to assess and promote continuous quality improvement. One of those, by the way, was the YPQA that some of you, I think, have heard of. At the time, a separate group of folks, a data work group, was exploring options, and they developed a model for data sharing between after-school providers and the school district. So you can see these 3 core elements were all in place by the time the first AfterZone launched in early 2010. At that point, with $400,000 in local government funding. Where we come to the magic of mayoral support. It's been just terrific for us here. Our mayor and every mayor, frankly, is a media magnet with almost endless opportunities to educate both in the grassroots and grass tops. Mayor Dean's communications office churns out media advisories, press releases, tweets, and electronic newsletters. But I tell you, most important is his personal commitment to this work. Dean often inserts unscripted comments about after school and NASA into interviews and speeches, whether he's talking about education, about public safety, about economic development, or quality of life issues for Nashvillians. Money could not buy that kind of marketing. And mayor, like most successful mayors, is also politically savvy, and he personally identified who he wanted on the leadership council, and he invited them personally. He strictly engages the elected officials and business leaders reminding them of this work, putting it in a context to make sense for them, and his inner circle of strategists has guided long-term planning for sustainability. Related into garnering the support of the Metro Council to fund NASA at steadily growing levels. Most of the growth is tied to expanded programming, frankly. Our first zone, we engaged 250 young people. This year we're at 1,000. By the time we get NASA countywide next year, we're going to be close to 1,500. As important as this financial commitment, however, is the financial support to system building. Full-time NASA director in the mayor's office, that's me, and there's also a full-time director in each after zone. That means that NASA is staffed up enough so that it can address virtually all of the responsibilities of a coordinating entity that are described in Section 4.2 of the study we're referencing today. So, just as one example, because I won't go through them all, to support youth program quality improvement, NASA has been able to underwrite the cost of delivering 87 professional development workshops to date. Youth from 95 agencies across the community have completed 8,000 training hours since NASA launched. And finally, this level of mayoral support has attracted attention and support at the state and national level. It is enduringly grateful for the opportunity to participate in closed application processes through LC, through Wallace, through Ready by 21, and by Tennessee's Commission on Children and Youth. We would be foolish, let me say, to minimize the role that Mayor Dean has played in opening those doors. So, let me just pivot to the future very quickly. For an inevitable mayoral transition is essential. If you're a highly committed mayor, you got to be ready for the future. And here in Nashville, we have been planning for the fall of 2015, when there will be a new mayor, a new school superintendent, and 20 new Metro Council members. The lead council appointed a sustainability work group that had been working already for more than a year to prepare for these seismic transitions. I'm going to show some strategies we are using here, all of which are still in process. I wish we could have a conversation all afternoon about sustainability. I'd love to chat with all of you about it. For me, for us here in NASA, what we've learned first is that you got to get everyone's skin in the game. We are on a fast track to get our 5th middle zone up and running next year, so that we can demonstrate the benefit of NASA to community's young people in every council and school board district. So our priority was breadth over depth. We had to get all over the county so everybody had some skin in the game. We also have to focus, though, on depth a little, because we calculated we needed at least 1,400 students engaged, active, targeting the highest 10% of the low-income middle school students in the district. Substantial presence all over the county means that we can approach each candidate next year and in 2015 and turn them into a champion, whether the focus is safe neighborhoods, education, business, whatever. We're going to be in front of all of them. Having a strong presence in each middle school also means that NASA has enough advocates there, whether it's principals, data coaches, the food service staff, bus routers, librarians, whomever, so that we can try to maintain the school commitment to this work and mitigate the risk during the superintendent's transition. You say that I think we all know, all of us as systems need to be very flexible and figure out how to strategically transition into new partnerships and new relationships. Our sustainability work group has explored a lot of different options, but decided if possible to maintain strong linkages to local government and its funding stream. local government, I will say, is structured so differently that I can't give you any one-size-fits-all recommendation, but I do encourage you to creatively explore lots of different possibilities. Outside the box, inside the box, wherever you've got local assets, and watch out for those potential local pitfalls. What I count on is that no new mayor wants to get stuck with a former mayor's legacies, and needs to get out of the mayor's office. For forging new relationships that are opportunistic, gives partners a chance to repackage or re-engineer to create a better shiny penny to put in front of the 2015 candidates. But this work, this whole strategizing, transitioning will work if the penny won't shine. So for us here, doing that hard work of building our case through data that supports our value add is essential. Mayor D have birthed Nashville's after-school system and nurtured its early years, but now it must make its own case for sustainability beyond his tenure. Chris, ready to take over? Hi,
Candy. Greetings from Boston, everyone. In the words of the new report commissioned by the Wallace Foundation, Boston After School and Beyond is a coordinating entity. Before getting under the hood and explaining what we do, however, allow me to provide just a brief history. So we're a private 501c3 nonprofit organization, but have close links to the city of Boston, with 4 members of the mayor's cabinet serving on our board of directors in an ex officio capacity. Executives from higher education, healthcare, business, the nonprofit communities.
Hey, I think we are a second. I just want to see. We did. So what we might do is, while it looks like he's going to call back in, is skip ahead to Jennifer. So that everyone. And we have Jennifer Roberts on the line, who is now, I believe, although her phone also seems to have disconnected. Actually, while we see what's happening with Jennifer and Chris, a great question just came in for Candy, so let's unmute Candy for a second here. So from Jamesville, Candy, you sort of picked up on this. How do you suggest partnering with a new mayor who is filling a mayor that was not connected to this work?
Well, we already have, we have a strategy. It's not new. It's the basic political strategy that almost anyone would use. I mean, we intend to, we're actually going to be linking NASA with some other frameworks in the community to make it even bigger and better, and be able to leverage some other initiatives in town and make them stronger as well. So we intend to re-engineer it and, as I say, create a new shiny penny. We intend to take that penny, that shiny penny, to every candidate for Metro Council and every mayoral candidate before the very first debate. Nashville, that's the way politics runs. You make sure you've got everybody on board so you never even show up as a topic in a debate. So we're going to let them battle it out on other scores, but we're going to make sure everybody's in our pocket. And part of it is list the candidates, know what works for them. If you got a retired homicide detective on board, absolutely, because we're putting programs in the neighborhoods where he knows where there's been a lot of crime, and he loves that we consulted him and are going in and working with the kids that he cares about. Somebody else is really into health and fitness, and because we do health and fitness in the after-school space, that's the message we take to them. And of course, you talk about the whole system, but I think you need to listen carefully to every candidate, figure out what works for them, and get in front of them before they even get elected.
Great, thanks, and sorry for the technical difficulties. So we're still waiting for Chris to come back on, but what we're going to do is Jennifer is now back on, and we're going to flash forward to Jennifer Roberts. We're so pleased to have joining us. Jennifer, can I just do a sound check to make sure you're actually there? You can say hello. She was. So, okay. Bella, we also have Bella Shelster. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Hi. So we have now Bella, who is the Principal Associate. We're just winging this a little bit now. Principal Associate of Afterschool Initiatives for the National League of Cities Institute for Youth Education and Families. And then Nina mentioned earlier on the call, the National League of Cities played a critical role in the developing this report on citywide coordination. And we wanted to bring Bella on because she works a lot with mayors and elected officials in communities around the country in helping them build and strengthen their after-school system. So we wanted to get the thoughts as well because of the interesting finding about the importance of mayors, but all recognizing that mayors, many communities have term limits. So Bella, if you could speak to your experience, some effective strategies for communities to sustain efforts beyond the term of mayors or other elected officials who champion the system's efforts.
Happy to do that. Good afternoon, everybody. Candy mentioned a couple of points that I was going to speak to from her local context, so I'm going to reiterate a little bit. Several communities have really embedded their city's interest and commitment for after-school and their system effort into a permanent structure that will remain beyond the mayor's term. It's so important, right, to think about sustainability at the front end of your system-building effort. So not just sustainability when you're thinking of financial resources, but gaining that leadership, their engagement and commitment from broad stakeholders. So one example is Mayor Beater in Boise, Idaho, created a council on children and families, and their first issue that they tackled was after school. So this council was formed there and was put into city ordinance. So this will exist beyond the mayor's term and will be sort of planning, advisory, and implementation group that involves key players across the community. Make sure you have those stakeholders at the table and you're really beginning to look at data, where the foreign programming, what resources collected does the city and the school and United Way and others have to contribute to their system. So that's one thing. Think about really embedding a process or a governance structure into the ordinance so that that task force or group can continue to focus on these issues. For example, we just learned from Madison, Wisconsin, who may be on the line, created a new permanent position to lead and manage their out-of-school time network that's just getting off the ground last year. And they held that person in the city's Department of Community Services, the Division of Planning. This position is half from the city, half by the schools. So that's a way to sort of make sure that your funding is diversified. But the position from the city was passed by Madison's Common Council, their city people, to make this a permanent position. So again, we know that staff person that's really leading your system building work is critical. And often communities are struggling to make sure that there's funding for their positions to work moving forward. So that Madison was able to do that is wonderful. There have been other cities like Seattle, Fort Worth, Little Rock, Arkansas that have passed tax levies to support after-school work and have embedded those resources in various departments. Another idea to really think about keeping this work going when a mayor is no longer in office is to do what Candy was saying. Ensure that your community leaders and faith-based leaders, businesses, and higher ed are all aware of the system building work that you're doing and are into it and the values so that when a mayor or turns or other leaders that have clout, visibility, and resources can step up. At the table already, you certainly don't want to be waiting until that last year when your mayor's going out of office to make sure that you have their support throughout. And if you have a structure in place over your system building efforts, consider your mayor potentially co-chair it with a community leader will keep the organization stable if there's transition. Our communications plan is really important. You want to ensure that people understand what an after-school is, what an after-school system is, and how it benefits them. So you want that key buy-in with public support for after-school so that grass tops and experts can demand it if someone tries to dismantle years of coordination work and system building that you've been doing. So be concise and targeted with your message and tailor it to different audiences. Last, I'd say, when preparing for transition, it's exactly what Candy said, engage with your new mayoral and city council candidates. Several communities have held forums with candidates to explore issues and also inform them of all work that's been going on in their communities. Find care about and talk after school as a solution to those issues. And as Candy said, you continue issue and make sure after school is connected to it. So sometimes the elected officials don't see it right, and if their interest is in business economic development, talk after school skills. If they're interested in public safety, talk after school solutions to really curb juvenile crime. And turn them into champions. So just a couple examples of ways to really think about how to keep this work moving forward, keep that momentum, even when a mayor is transitioning. Some structure, work with your current mayor who's a champion to try to build some sustainable structures and get that into city governance, in an ordinance, what have you, so that the positions are not, up forward or up for action in the following years, and that your leader, especially your director of your system, there's some continuity there and there are resources to keep that work going.
Thank you so much, Beth. Thank you. And that was a great segue to Chris Smith, who is on, because in Boston, just after, I believe, 20 years with Mayor Menino, Chris can correct me, they just had an election and they have a new mayor in place. So this is not, Chris is going to focus his remarks there, but just a great segue of how a whole initiative will sustain itself through mayoral transitions. And so, Chris, now, if you don't mind, we'd love to hear from you about your work with Boston After School and Beyond.
Thanks, Kate. And as Candy has said, and Bella too, this is a continued process of asking yourself what role you're playing in the city and why, and where you can add the most value. I mentioned our partnership work is driven by establishing shared goals, measures, and a focus on young people. And the principle to mobilize really a wide variety of partners is that we need to embrace flexibility in approaches to meet students where they are, but consistency in measurement. This approach actually enables learning across organizations, knowing what works and what doesn't work. Our goal broadly is to connect school, after school, and summer learning so that people have the knowledge, skills, and experiences necessary to succeed in school, college, work, and life. We approach this in three ways. One is through whole child approaches with a particular focus on skills in addition to academics. In other words, those skills that you could develop after school and apply all throughout life. This area is high-quality programs and learning environments. This is where we seek lots of collaboration across a wide variety of organizations. And access to opportunities for those who find themselves on the wrong side of the opportunity gap. So we keep that focus in mind through our collaboration. And the way we approach this is really in three phases. First is to convene stakeholders, mentioned here, around key issues of common interest. For example, learning, school partnerships, preparing out of school time for teenagers, capacity building in STEM, bring skills, and of course, data measurement overall. We convene a partnership council of more than 50 organizations that work on these issues on a regular basis. So that's the first step. The second, where we have interest, and especially among the funding community, is to design and manage demonstration projects in order to create proof points and identify areas for deeper exploration. Ultimately, we seek to embed those successful elements of the demonstration projects in the policy and funding infrastructure. And thus in here, where we're working with so many organizations, is that we are intentionally lean and efficient, which is necessary in a set of so many different kinds of players. In our database, bostonnavigator.org, we have more than 800 organizations that run over 2,000 programs. So we employ a small but productive staff of project managers. To give you a sense of the scale, we're 10 staff. Our budget is about $4 million, with 91% of expenses going toward programs, about two-thirds of expenses being grants and contracts with other organizations. We're supported by a partnership of the City of Boston and the local foundations, including our United Way. That enables us to pursue larger funding opportunities on behalf of the field. And as an example of that, we're part of the Wallace Foundation Summer Learning Initiative. In a sense of how these things can be done, we're actually 90% private. In order to realize our full potential, we know that we have to play to our strengths as a system. As we move forward, as Jessica noted, with the first new mayor in 20 years, we're keeping the following few lessons in mind. First, we're staying focused on where there are gaps and we can add the most value. We're staying connected to core stakeholders and funders and listening closely to the field to identify opportunities for collaboration. And what you see now on the screen is an example of that. This is our youth development framework we call Achieve Connect 5. And this really came from the field. Survey goes a long way. We asked providers what they felt they developed in kids and what they felt was to be held accountable for. And this is what emerged. And this has really launched a whole new area of collaborative work around how to measure and ultimately improve these skills. If you're like us and you rely more on influence and authority in carrying out your work, make sure that your agenda is compelling enough to attract organizations on a voluntary basis. There to be individual benefit to this sort of collective action. Or steal Candy's phrase, the penny has to shine. Let me turn it back to Jessica of Every Hour Counts.
Oh, so much, Chris, and thanks for that great overview of Boston After School and Beyond and your work to coordinate After School in Boston. Our last speaker is Jen Roberts, who's the Vice President of Education at Baptist Community Ministries. We're happy to have Jennifer joining us to represent the local foundation voice in building coordinated after-school systems. Baptist Community Ministries is a foundation committed to improving the physical, mental, spiritual, and social lives of people living in the greater New Orleans area. Jennifer oversees their education portfolio, and through that, with Baptist Community Ministries, they've been a longtime supporter and partner for citywide after-school coordinated efforts in New Orleans. And now we'll hear from Jennifer about the role of local foundations in supporting citywide after-school coordination.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on the call to respond. As Jessica said, my name is Jen Roberts, and I'm the VP for Education at BCM, which is a large health conversion foundation in Louisiana that specifically focuses on improving communities in the greater New Orleans area. For nearly 20 years, we have focused on improving educational outcomes through building systems infrastructure and funding direct service providers in a variety of fields, including after school. In the early aughts, we helped create the Greater New Orleans After School Collective, which at the time was a by Intermediary that eventually became the organization currently known and respected as the Partnership for Youth Development here in New Orleans. Since Hurricane Katrina, as you can imagine, much of our investments have been focused on rebuilding and building all systems. So after school, healthcare, education, criminal justice. So speaking today a little bit about some advice pertaining to our work specifically on this out-of-school time area. To give you a little bit of context, our work with our local intermediary, the Partnership for Development, has been completely integrated into our organization over the past 3 years. We have focused specifically on building some deep capacity in their organization, but the reality is we really treat them as a valued partner in this work. While we certainly do fund them, we also exchange content expertise policy and advocacy ideas, national funding strategies, and strategies for improving quality on a fairly routine basis. It is not unheard of for me to speak to the executive director on almost a daily or multiple times a day. The is built on mutual respect and has leveraged, because of this kind of nice symbiotic relationship, national partnership opportunities, specifically related to our work around Ready by 21's collective impact approach on our building of the Youth Master Plan for the City of New Orleans, as well as some work related to the Aspen Opportunity Youth Incentive Fund recently launched by the Aspen Institute. In addition, speaking to foundations and prospective grantees, I often ask why we fund at the systems level, and advice I would give to intermediaries working with or seeking to work with some local funders in their communities. I will attempt to give you some insight into this now, but I'm happy to answer any questions offline should anybody be interested in a more formal conversation. BC has chosen to work at the system level because we strongly believe that it's where we get our greatest return on our investment. As most of us in this field say, children do not live in programs or schools. They actually live in communities and families, and these are directly impacted by multiple systems on a day-to-day basis. We've been investing heavily in the alignment and the improvement of multiple systems actually enables our families to be more effectively served and actually strengthens communities. We also believe that investing in systems is a strong sustainability mechanism. We believe building strong systems usually means fewer private resources down the line, and it means we're usually using more public dollars more effectively, which, of course, to a local foundation is really important. We also believe that programs can be cut, and we don't like to see it happen, but in those lean times, which we know have occurred a lot as of late, we have to rely on the systems to carry forward the work. We do exclusively fund systems. We also believe that you have to continue building capacity in your strongest providers, or else the system has no functioning partners or places to bring your potential political champions. And sometimes it's kind of hard to contextualize systems building for funders, and some funders are always going to only be interested in seeing kids in action, and that's okay, because we think we need to do both. For the funding to do systems level work, I have a few pieces of advice. Is to really recognize the elephant in the room and understand that systems are inherently attractive or understood by some funders. You may, in fact, have to, quote unquote, educate them about how system conditions contribute to the problem and show how tackling system issues will serve the funders' interests. Most funders care about access. Most funders care about participation and can generally make the link between these things and city leadership, better data, better program quality. Discuss how these investments can be staged, so you don't have to jump straight into funding all three, as we discussed earlier, but you can focus on bringing political support, focus on building a better data system or building program quality is a solution to that. In addition to the resources, of course, at the Wallace Foundation, I think that the Forum for Youth Investment is a great ally in this work, and they have terrific materials online to help articulate that general need for systems-level intervention for youth. Second thing that I would consider is you need to differentiate and really be realistic between the layers of systems influence at the local, regional, and state levels. Getting your community to use one single data system isn't going to automatically fix funding at the state level. So I think communicating realistically to your funders how you're going to pace yourself in the work, being realistic about your reach is a good strategy. Third thing I would kind of think about is, relatedly, talk about concretely how your work at the system level will actually change the community that you're working in. What policies can be specifically changed? What does it mean in terms of different behaviors, such as funding, service eligibility, the reach to certain subpopulations? It's really important to be specific in that respect. That you're an intermediary, I think it's also really important to use the intermediary's capacity to change and influence the system and explain how that happens. Being an intermediary requires a different set of skills and capacities than those providing direct service. And so for some funders, you're going to have to educate them again on why having coordinating entities is so critical to improving participation and quality. If you haven't read any of the work from the Wallace Foundation on this that really discusses investing in intermediaries, I would highly recommend perusing them as well as sharing that research with your local funders. One of the things that made BCM initial investment as strong as they have been and for the long haul, one of the things that really worked is actually were invited initially 20 years ago to go on some site visits to cities that just started really investing in systems level intervention around this particular field. And one of the things that I thought that was terrific is that on those site visits, we actually had the opportunity to meet with local funders. And I think that that's critical. Sometimes it takes those outside experts and other local funders elsewhere to convince a local funder in your own community why this is so important. And so we are, in fact, planning to take a trip already, particularly given so much of the investment that's going on and the good work going on around the country. It does not hurt to invite your local funders on those trips with you. If anything, it builds a relationship. It shows that you're thinking a little bit more critically about your role with them, and it also gives them the opportunity to kind of cross-network and cross-pollinate with some of their peers in the field. I find this thing that's also really interesting is that in our respect, we have our intermediary who does tremendous work, but they've also partnered in ways with some direct service organizations that can also speak to them for intermediaries to tackle those common issues. So we believe that intermediaries benefit from partnering directly with some of those high capacity providers, and they can help make the case for investment for you. Some direct service providers don't have the time or the skills to this, and it's also sometimes risky, particularly in cities where you have a shallow funding community, but it's a really compelling partnership that we've seen work really productively in New Orleans. Lastly, I would say that if money isn't an option, given the shallow funding communities that some of our operators are working in, I think it's important to utilize other capital and resources of local funders to start building that long-term relationship. Funders have significant influence over policy agendas, business council communities, relationships with the mayor, and can also use convening power to bring together organizations and political champions in a neutral way that perhaps operators or organizations on the ground may not be able to. And so begin demonstrating capacity for this work by taking on an alternative role with a funder, set an advisor, and get them on board generically about the work so that you can build that deeper financial relationship down the road. So those are just a few comments. I'm happy to discuss any of these kind of strategies today or offline, but for now I'm going to turn it over back to our friends at Every Hour Account.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. It's always it's a treat to hear from a funder herself provide honest advice about really the need to educate funders about the importance of systems building. And with Every Hour Account just posted a link to some documents. We just released some messaging resources that you may check out that could be helpful in how to convey the value of after-school systems to stakeholders in your community, such as funders. But thank you so much, Jennifer. We got a great question, and again, we just have a few minutes left, but if you have a burning question, please submit it in the chat or Q&A box. We did get a terrific question about the STRIDE network. So this question is directed to Chris with Boston After School and Beyond. So how do you interface with your STRIDE network, if at all? So if you can respond to that, Chris.
You have a Cradle to Career collaborative. It's called the Opportunity Agenda, and as the name suggests, it's look at key benchmarks from birth through college completion, even to the workforce. And the way we orient ourselves to that collaboration is to show what part of the agenda we plan. And for keeping kids on track for high school graduation, with a afterschool and summer in particular, are key strategies for keeping students on track. So that's an example of how to be not just about issue, but looking for opportunities to collaborate on larger issues, which elevates what organizations are doing and puts their work in a different light.
Thank you. And another question just came in for Candy. Candy, just quickly, where's the database housed in Nashville? And quickly, in a minute or two, what data? Yeah. So where is it housed as a quickie? But I don't know if you can address what data is shared with the after-school organizations. If you can address that, please.
Yes. So because we did a lot of proactive planning at the front end, we and because it's a formal partnership between pro schools and NASA, that's we have a formal MOU. We really are enrolling all the NASA participants into one of the applications of our Metro School student management system. So there are direct linkages for us between in a NASA program, but also in levels of participation. So we can look at dosage as well, and then kind of slice and dice our NASA student participants against virtually all of the data that's housed in Metro School's data warehouse. I have, and I probably need to get, I will ensure that it gets posted on our website if it isn't already, both a sample of the kind of the model, the graphic of how this data system and our NASA application, how they interface and how data flows, because it flows every day. So we have access to very timely student data. But we'll also give you a sample of a dashboard that the programs are providers, the site coordinators or whomever can look at with someone from the school staff to become the Balfons indicators. We're really looking at school attendance, school behavior, and then course. So dashboard speaks to all of that. Unfortunately, I could spend several hours talking to you about that, and my colleagues and I have, in fact, warned people out at workshops all over the country about our data system. So I'll let it go at that. But we'll get those basic templates on our website, which is NashvilleZ, the letter Z.org.
Great, Candy, and thank you for that question. We now it's 3:00, so we're gonna bring this webinar to a close. I wanted to just thank our panelists, Nina, Candy, Chris, and Jennifer, and our special guest, Alishal Spooner from the National League of Cities, for participating, and all of you on the line. Just a couple reminders to access the report that we've spoken about today on citywide coordination and other go-to must-read system-building resources from the Wallace Foundation. Please visit the Knowledge Center at their website, wallacefoundation.org. Also, if you're hungry for more information on citywide coordinated efforts, check out our publication from 2012 called Making the Connections, which provides a comprehensive introduction to the role and impact of intermediary organizations. And we just sent around that link in chat box. And it's also on our website, which is listed here. So please stay in touch with us. And thank you all so much again for joining us this afternoon. And we hope this webinar was really helpful to your work. And email us if you have suggestions for us to improve this next time around. So thank you. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving.